Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Kurt Wuckert Jr. This is the CoinGeek Weekly live stream. And just before I went live, my microphone decided to disconnect from everything. So I'm speaking directly into the computer, which means if I don't close every other application, they're going to be beeping through the broadcast. So I may look a little unprofessional for a few moments as I close things, but I'm doing my best for the love of God, everybody. So let's talk just a little bit about some of the cool stuff that's been going on the last few days. And then we are going to be bringing in our delightful guest, Joe. Did I freeze? I look frozen on my system. Brandon, can you see and hear me? Give me a thumbs up. All right, we're good. All right, so I don't know what's going on with my system. I got Greg Maxwell hacking me to death right now. I can feel it. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about the Miami Bitcade, which was awesome. Okay, so Saturday night, we all got together and brought out all the coolest people in the world to play video games on the coolest blockchain on earth. It was a hand cash affair. Everybody had to have a hand cash wallet as they entered, and then they got to play video games. We saw everybody from, there was a Haste Arcade display, but there was a specific display for Saddle Runner, as well as Duro Dogs playing with the NFTs and some other stuff. Very, very cool. I also went and did a bunch of nonsense over at BTC 2022. And by nonsense, I mean interviewing all kinds of people that were really, really excited about fiat currency, basically. Like they all got the number go up, which is what Max Kaiser promised them when he bought their souls and sold them to the devil. And so they were very excited to be rich. It was a good time. Ultimately, I interviewed, I don't know, probably 60 or 70 people. Had a really good camera crew. Had a really good time with all of that. I tried to wave at my dear friend Peter McCormick, who was sitting with Michael Saylor. So I'm yelling, "Hey, Peter!" And he turns to look at me to give a wave, and then realizes it's me, and then just pretends I'm not there and looks the other way. So I thought that was pretty funny too. And talked to a bunch of people. There were actually a lot of BSV friendlies in the crowd, and they all said the same thing. Like you go talk to them, and hey, I think BSV is pretty cool. Just don't tell the other people in the booth. Which is also very funny. So I just kept telling everybody. I told everybody, I'm like, dude, you're like the 50th person who said that today. If you would just talk about it and everybody else did, like we could have a good time. So that was also funny. Show was great. And then some other cool stuff happened over the weekend. BSV hit all kinds of benchmarks, like 13 million transactions a day, somewhere between Saturday and Sunday. The biggest blocks ever mined, the biggest number of transactions in a block ever mined, and a whole bunch of other cool stuff there. Most notably, all done by Gorilla Pool. So Gorilla Pool and Crypto Fights set a ton of proof of work world records over the weekend, and it made me very, very happy. So I want to say thank you and congratulations to my good friend Root, who goes ahead and runs the infrastructure. And I want to thank David and the Crypto Fights, the Fix people, for kicking ass and making all that possible. We're doing really cool stuff over at Gorilla Pool. Mind blown. But we have a guest today. And the guest is a guy that I had a really good time hanging out with in Miami as well. Hanging out at the party, hanging out, sharing some kind of really good deep fried bread, flatbread thing at about 2 a.m. when I really, frankly, should have been home. He brought some good stuff with him. We had a really good time. But we're going to play an ad first. So Brandon Ward, our co-executive producer, filling in as Alex Moon is trying to get his ankle bracelet cut off by the Thai government. Brandon is going to play the ad, and we are going to come back with Joe DePinto, the co-founder of Haste Arcade. Brandon, play it.
Imagine going to your local arcade, inserting a quarter into the game, and posting a high score on the leaderboard. And then everyone who comes after you and fails to beat your high score, you get a portion of their quarter every time. Now imagine placing that high score on a global leaderboard where millions of daily players are fighting for your top spot. This is a game changer. This is Haste Arcade. Jump in right now and play across multiple modern arcade-style games, earning cash instantly deposited to your hand cash wallet. Let's introduce Player Cards, the world's first output NFT. You can mint your own and gather others, from friends to top players. For any player card you hold, You earn a portion of each gameplay output. This is a Haste token. Earn them daily just for playing. They can be used to purchase things like prizes, player cards, and more. Trade them on exchanges or simply redeem them for cash. This is the next gen of gaming. Play, earn, grow on Haste Arcade.
It's a really good ad. I like it. Brandon, bring in Joe. Where's Joe at? Let's go, Brandon. What's up, Joe? How you doing?
How's it going, Kurt? That was actually the first time I've seen that on like a live type feed. That was pretty cool, huh? Wow.
Hey, man, dude, you guys are killing it. This is good stuff.
Well, yeah, that was definitely exciting. And I'm still a little bit jet lagged from Miami. It's been kind of like a crazy 48 hours or so, but yeah, it was great seeing you out there. That was definitely a really fun time.
Absolutely. Well, you can move to South Florida. We can hang out all the time. I keep telling everybody that's where the action's at.
Yeah, that's definitely come up recently in quite a few conversations that we've been having. Most of our team's already out that way in North Carolina. It's going to be tough to leave California, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. Well, we don't have to talk about global politics and which coast is the best coast, but let's talk a little bit about Haste. You guys came onto the scene like what, a year and a half ago. You had this beta game that was literally like touch the dot, and I really liked it, but it was a very simple little proof of concept. Now all of a sudden you guys have like a full-blown suite of really cool things. My wife has been driving me nuts playing like the Space Invaders style game, making all kinds of noise because she seemingly cannot play without all of the sound effects. Yeah. What's it like working at Haste? I know you guys have like tripled the size of your team over the last year and stuff too. What's the story, man?
Yeah, it's been really fun, really cool to see like what we've done as a team, the things that the dev side has built so far. And I think most importantly, like just sticking to the roadmap that we put together. So, I mean, you alluded to it. I think, if people know a little bit about our story, we didn't really plan on doing anything, when we launched that first game. It was just, hey, we wanted to show microtransactions to our friends and be like, this is some cool stuff you can do with the original protocol of Bitcoin. And what it turned into, Dan and I personally had always wanted to get involved with Bitcoin, with BSV, but this just seemed like an opportunity that really happened on its own. And so once, it was cool. Dave and Jackson from Unbounded were there this weekend also, and I was talking to Dave a little bit. But they wrote an article about a week after we launched that first Haste game that was really what kind of pushed us to realizing, hey, there's a lot more that we can do. This doesn't just have to be one little game. We can make a platform that other people can then use, these instant leaderboard payouts and plug them into their games. And it could be a whole new like microtransaction revolution, which was really what got us excited. And like, okay, you know what, there is like an actual business that we can build here. And I think with what we've done over the last year, like you said, I mean, we started only in January last year, and it feels like I met you in Zurich yesterday, but I mean, that's almost a year ago to the date. Yeah. And it seems like, the progress that we've made has been a lot more on the back end side than necessarily like pumping out new games. I think you're going to start to see a lot more new games, better graphics, more advanced type stuff in the, shortish term future coming from us. But basically most of the progress we've done to this point has been, how do we get our entire platform in a position where it's ready to scale to the mainstream gamer, which is literally what we've started doing within the last week, doing paid, ad campaigns on YouTube, Google, working with BBG. It looks like their streamers are actually going to start promoting little in-game tournaments today. And so just getting things ready for, as 10 people start to come to the arcade, 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people, are we in a position, with our infrastructure to support that? And then number two, is the onboarding experience something that is going to make it really easy for someone who doesn't know and doesn't care necessarily about crypto to start, playing and just having a good time? And so that's what the key focus has been for the last several months. Obviously, Handcash getting their fiat ramps done was a big step for that also. But we feel like we're at a point now where we've done all of the, the hard legwork, the stuff that people aren't really going to see. I guess to make a baseball reference, the time in the weight room that, you don't see that when you're out on the field. But in essence, what our next phase is going to be is, okay, let's really go and test this theory that people are going to like instant leaderboard payouts in the mainstream. let's start promoting this to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, which going back to when we started, that was one of the other things that we would talk about internally is, we haven't seen a company really in the crypto space other than maybe, an NFT drop or the major exchanges, but we haven't seen a lot of companies actually marketing to the mainstream. Like, when was the last time you were on YouTube and saw an advertisement for an actual like application that was blockchain related, as opposed to just, hey, come on Coinbase and, do whatever you want to make your fiat money or whatever.
Buy my bags.
Yeah, get your bags. Right, exactly. And nothing wrong with getting bags. We want people to get bags. But I think that's where you're going to start to see from us next is, we got to the point where we can now start testing our theory that if you promote this to the mainstream audience and actually spend real ad dollars, we can get a decent amount of people coming into the arcade and build a real business using BSV.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. I think one of those things, funny, this has been talked about for like, as long as I've been a Bitcoiner, there's been the conversation about like, what do we call this? Do we call them bits or just Bitcoin or sats? And then Handcash introduced the Duro. And then we've also got all the people talking about tokens. And like, I don't know what the answer is. I like basically everybody's arguments in some ways, but then there's weaknesses to all of them too. And the thing that I was sort of thinking about is, what if everybody had an internal token and we don't call it a stable coin, but we just denominate in dollars, but somebody sends, let's say they buy they're buying down. They don't know they're buying tokens, right? But they buy an internal stable coin, $50, and they get $50, and they're transacting over a stable coin. Like, is this something like, what is your opinion? Does Haste have like a hard and fast, like this is the company policy, or what do you think? What do you think is the best way to onboard normal people? Because I think that's the biggest thing in a lot of people's minds is like, I don't want to be exposed to the volatility. And granted, it doesn't matter if they're buying $50 just to play some games, but maybe it does to other people. So what do you think? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that was a topic that, prior to, I'm going to say maybe 2 or 3 months ago, when we first started really addressing the onboarding experience, that question came up quite a bit. And we talked to the people at Handcash. You were probably part of some of those conversations as well, just getting like the general consensus from the community on what do we think would be the best approach. And I do think long-term, like there should be some type of stable token on BSV to make it extremely simple. But we've done our best, I guess, at this point with the new onboarding experience to give a user the ability to purchase quote unquote like credits. And it's still going to fluctuate in the sense that, if you buy $5 worth of credits, you're going to get an amount of Satoshis for that $5. Sure. Now, because we denominate our games in fiat, so, you play for a penny or for 10 cents or for $1, I might buy $5 worth of credits, and the number of Satoshis I get, on one day is going to warrant me 100 gameplays. But if the price of BSV goes up or down the next day, my Satoshis might only warrant, a different number of gameplays. So for the time being, that's the system that we have. We did talk about, only denominating games in Satoshis, so that way, if I buy $5 worth of sats, I know that I'm always going to be able to play X amount of games at the, the 100 Satoshi, not the 100, the 1000 Satoshi level, the 10,000, etc. But what we decided on was, from the mainstream perspective, we don't want them to have to like learn if they don't want to. So we didn't want to price things in Satoshis simply for the reason that, a customer now has to go and learn what a Satoshi is. And if they're not interested in that, so be it. If they are, which we think people will become more and more interested in the more they interact with the ecosystem, then great. But for the time being, we're just going to price it in what people are already used to seeing, US dollars, fiats, pennies, dimes, whatever. And, if the value of your credits, changes in terms of the number of gameplays that you can have on a given day, that's something that, we explain that within the actual user's account. So it'll show you this is how many credits you have, and, this is the value of your credits. As that fluctuates, there is like a little icon on, hey, cryptocurrency can be volatile. The value of your credits could change based on price fluctuations. But for the most part, we think that, when you're playing at the penny or the 10-cent level anyways, like the price fluctuations aren't going to be that big of a deal to the point where people are going to be, upset about, hey, I deposited $20 and now I only have $17 worth of gameplays. So it was one of those things we had to make a decision on. Obviously, if there was a stable token, I think that would be phenomenal. That would solve basically all the problems. But one step at a time. I think there's definitely going to be someone in the BSV community that ends up doing that project and making it something that we can use also.
No, for sure. And that's, I feel the same way. I've always looked at it and said, like, just play for a few bucks, and like maybe your $5 is worth $50 in 5 years, and like whatever, keep earning the satoshis, right?
Yeah.
So it's a funny thing. I see there's a couple of questions in here, and this actually will segue into some of what was going on over the weekend, asking, can Haste Games use arcade joysticks? And I know the answer, but I'm going to go ahead and let you answer.
Yeah, so the answer to that is yes, as was on demonstration both at CES in January and then at the Bitcade on Saturday. So we do have the ability to configure joysticks, buttons to do certain actions within the different games. And I think what that's going to lead to is, and this is something that we've talked about internally as a team, and then obviously me being out there in Miami and seeing an actual Bitcade in person, we want to start doing more events like that, with or without CoinGeek's help. But basically, from our perspective, like, it makes perfect sense. Hey, let's go to a bar and let's partner with the bar, in fact. And hey, you guys, take a percentage of the outputs. Let us set up this system, this, piece of hardware that's basically a screen and a joystick, and we'll do a one-night pop-up Bitcade type event. So yeah, you can. We at least have the ability to use joysticks and configure them for these games. Again, I'm not the most technical, so I'm not going to be able to tell, a gamer how they can go home and set up their joystick into their computer and start playing. But that stuff is definitely possible. And if you hop on our Discord, I'm sure Eric or Keith would love to answer questions on how to get that set up.
For sure. I think, the first time I saw Haste and the first time I actually, thought about it and started to really understand what you guys were doing, I looked into you and Dan. I'm like, all right, I like these guys. I appreciate some independent thinkers seeing Bitcoin and seeing it the way I see it, because I've always wanted to do like a cool business that does micropayments, and you guys saw it independently and came to the same conclusions I did. But I keep thinking, what's the distributor model? As someone I love pinball. If every year for my birthday and every other day of my life I could go do what I want, there'd be pinball involved. I just think it's a lot of fun. And so what would it take to connect a Raspberry Pi or something to antique arcade machines and allow each either retro arcade or modern arcade or whatever to institute ILP at their business? Is this something that you guys have thought out? Because actually, whether you have or not, I think that there's a middle business in there that could be like your local Haste Arcade distributorship that has a little piece of hardware and can do a little bit of firmware and software work and ultimately make some kind of a cut by setting up their local arcade with this technology. What do you think? Did I just blow the lid off of something you guys have been working on in private, or what do you think of this?
Working on, not necessarily, but definitely something we've roadmapped out and talked about would be the notion of, a physical console or some type of, chip that you could add to existing arcade machines that all of a sudden ILP is possible. So basically it would be taking the SDK that we have and putting it in something physical that you can then go and, attach to an existing device. That for us on the roadmap is probably not something you're going to see in the near future. But that is absolutely something that we've talked about internally about, it seems like there would be a great market for that. I mean, casinos, they already have arcades for the kids. Seems like a no-brainer type of place and situation to do that stuff. Yeah. Again, the idea of an actual physical console that not just Haste powered, but blockchain powered in general, where you could attach wallets and stuff like that, and you could have ILPs and earn and exchange tokens. All this stuff we've definitely talked about, but I think we've stayed pretty true to the roadmap and getting to at least this point where we can start testing, our theories and our strategies on at least getting people in the mainstream to the current arcade. So I think in terms of where what you're talking about would play in, as we start to see success with, onboarding and getting mainstream users into the arcade, that's when we'll start, okay, we basically checked this box. We can put this on some type of autopilot or bring in other people to facilitate this as we continue now down the roadmap onto some of these bigger ideas, which like you just brought up, the physical arcade style stuff with ILP. there's other verticals we think you could take ILP, like loyalty programs. I mean, that's the type of stuff we talk about, maybe once every other week in terms of what's our long-term company vision, what do we want to get to. So yeah, I mean, you're basically on the board, what's going on.
Well, I keep thinking like, how do you scale this out from like a business standpoint, right? Like your business is great, the technology is great, but like, let's bring in like the franchise model. What if your local Haste franchise, that was their job to like sell and then maintain the hardware that allows us to happen at like every bar that's got a Mortal Kombat machine, or, little arcades, or even places that have like pool tables and stuff like that. Like you can gamify any of this stuff. And, I don't know. It strikes me as a huge business opportunity. If people just saw like, hey, you could be making a penny output on every transaction, like forever, if you're the guy that sets this up, and it's like, oh, and then those pennies could be worth dollars in 5 years. And like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah. I mean, well, even in Miami, I hopped on a screen call with Alex Moon because he was in that Thai prison still. But he was talking similar to what you're saying about like a business development strategy where, we don't need the physical machines even right now. Like we're going to start targeting people in general, just like, hey, if you have connections to gaming studios or game developers, like let's get in touch with them and just have them play with the SDK, right? Like the physical aspect I think is really cool and something that we want to get to, but there's nothing really at this point stopping us. And that, again, it goes back to the onboarding and making sure that when we approach the mainstream, we're ready. But at this point, like, after we launch the next handful of games, our focus, at least for where the arcade currently is let's get some bigger studios involved. Let's build a user base where it's attractive now to go to, I don't know if Riot Games, that's one of the biggest studios in the world, but you go to a Riot Games and say, hey, we have 100,000 people, which isn't a ton compared to what you guys are doing, but in general, like here's the results, here's the engagement that we're seeing from them. You can scale and model that to any studio, any independent game developer. So yeah, to your point, I think there's definitely some things that we're going to be doing to incentivize people to go out and, basically not act as salespeople, but benefit if they are able to create, connections to game developers that want to use the SDK. So you can definitely build some type of referral type, marketing campaign strategy out for the people that do want to make those connections.
For sure. And actually, we should talk off the air. I'm pretty good friends with somebody who was involved in the creation of Need for Speed and has serious connections over at EA. So
I think I might know who you're talking about, but yeah, we should talk off air.
She's a South Florida girl.
That is Mrs. White, isn't it? Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. Okay. So if you know her already, then good. But let's let's make some stuff happen. Let's talk a little bit about the Bitcade. Actually, let's take this question first. Put it back up, Brandon.
Sure.
All right. What kind of game could blow up with micropayments? Like, what do you think is the big thing?
I go back and forth on this, and again, it's stuff that we talk about in our team strategy calls. Obviously, I think that if you got like a Call of Duty that was doing something like a kill death ratio instant leaderboard payout with micropayments, like a headshots type deal, I think that would be massive just based on the total number of players they have. But in terms of, what we came up with, I think Jump is a pretty good example that if you build a game that's quick, but just simple yet frustrating enough where like, I should be better at this. I should be able to jump more than 2 pillars at a time. Like all I have to do is tap. It's not a huge deal.
Right.
There's something that keeps people coming back to that. So I think, and that's the game that, we're going to be highlighting for the most part with the BBG people as they start streaming. I think for the time being, because we're not working with those major studios yet, it's going to be something that is, takes less than 5 to 10 seconds per game, has a little bit of an irritation because of how easy it appears to be, but then also has, some sleek graphics. And that was something from the Bitcade. I was actually pretty blown away at what people were saying about Lost and Jump just in terms of the overall gameplay. Like we look at those and we think they're fairly simple, but people seem to really think that they were, quality design type games, and that's cool.
Yeah.
I think that also ties back to like the original Haste game itself was so easy. You could almost brand that as like, hey, this is the easiest game you'll ever play. All you have to do is tap a button. I think it's going to be something like that
Yeah.
that truly goes viral in the mainstream, where it's almost frustrating that you can't do better because it's something that you should be good at. And unfortunately, with like the original Haste game, I don't know if there's people that wonder this, but there were reasons that can't exist, like in the new arcade from a security standpoint. But that game I thought was like an unbelievable culmination of like, okay, we're demonstrating micropayments, but we've also created something that's like so simple yet frustrating, or like when you're playing against your friends and you see them beat you by 2 milliseconds, it's just like, I have to go play again.
Right.
That's what I think it's going to take.
I agree. It was. And that's the thing, is that the first game really had me like, oh, like I'm number 3, like it's just so ridiculous. Well, I think it's really funny too how much things have changed with like, because I'm from the 80s, right? I was born in 86. So for me, I remember when like the original Super Mario, like a runner and these kind of things. But I used to play games like Excite Bike, like 2D, pixelated graphics and all this stuff. And then it went the direction of things like Call of Duty and these like really deep immersive story mode kind of games. And then you get the multiplayer mode where you're all like, shit talking each other the whole time. And like, but then it's come back to like the biggest games are these ridiculous, like really simple cell phone games. And like, I think that started with like Candy Crush Saga and some of these things, and has made its way like much simpler again, which lends itself really well to what you guys are doing. And it's funny to see, like, I don't know which one will be the bigger take on stuff like that, but it was really interesting to see like at the Bitcade. So to set this up for anybody that has no idea what we were doing on Saturday night, CoinGeek put together with a few different game makers, put together some TVs and like arcade style setup, so you can walk around like a room, but it was semi-outdoor. It had a roof, but you can walk around, you can wait in line, and you can play the games. You can watch other people play games, and you log in with your hand cash and you just play, right? So this is the classic arcade experience, but powered by Bitcoin. I think every game there was a Haste powered game in some way. I guess Dogs was a hand cash game without any Haste integration, but going that direction and just seeing people able to very simply engage with Bitcoin in a way that is just like, it's not complicated. It wasn't cypherpunk. We weren't all running our own nodes. And, even though I'm a little beardy right now, we didn't all have, Blockstream beards and all of that stuff. But like, what's it like seeing somebody, first of all, just using your business in a very basic sense is like, got to just be generally exciting, but using your business in a way that is like, nobody's done this before. Like using Bitcoin, using the technology, these are things that people said were like impossible because of, computer science conundrums just like 3 years ago. And now your business very trivially utilizes the technology to do this really awesome thing. So it's a little bit of a ramble, but what's it like for you to see it actually in an arcade situation and just people playing games because the games are fun and that's it?
I think being there in person that was one of the cooler things I've experienced so far with this whole Bitcoin journey. And more so because, I've been to a handful of these events now, and it usually is a lot of the same faces who are already pro BSV people. But what I was really blown away by at this particular event, there were several hundred people that rolled through there, and the majority of them, like, I did not recognize for the first time at one of these things. And they weren't, they were the audience that we're going after, whether they were people that had come from the BTC convention or people that just happened to be at the venue and saw this cool event going on and just came in to see what was going on. Like, people were genuinely excited just in general about what was going on, whether they knew that there was crypto involved or not. And I think like that was somewhat of a rewarding feeling, just because like the original goal that Dan and I had was, how can you just do something that is using blockchain and the power of micropayments, but without people even having to understand or care? And I think I saw that like in the physical, which to me, I feel like was a really good sign in general of what's going on in the space. It's like, hey, we're past the point of needing to explain things to everyone. We now have actual products, and not just Haste. I'm talking about like this BSV community in general. There's products that you can just go and use now the way that they're intended to be used. And the Bitcoin is the underlying, thing that's driving all that. But for mainstream adoption, you don't need to learn what a node is. You don't need to learn about mining. You don't need to learn any of this stuff. You should just be able to go and use it. Like, go explain how email works, 15 years ago. Like, it's not necessary to know some of this underlying plumbing, as we all call it. But I thought seeing, the amount of fresh faces, and then also the people that were, call them maxis or whatever you want to say, getting to actually talk to them and getting them to interact with Bitcoin and use these games and play these games, and kind of like the, whoa, wait a minute, like moment that they all had. And there wasn't a single one, except for, well, there was one guy who didn't want to get in a picture because he was afraid, like, if the rest of the maxi community sees me, I'm going to be excommunicated.
Gonna get his laser eyes revoked. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. But even like talking to those guys, they're like, wow, I just didn't realize this was possible, to do with Bitcoin. This is a real world utility. This is cool. Like, no one left that event thinking like, oh, that was stupid, or like, hey, this is just another scam on BSV or whatever. Like, that was actually, people left there having learned something about what you can do with blockchain. And just going back to like our original goal, like that was the whole point. Like, how can we educate people in a simple, fun way that, you don't have to be an expert on this stuff to enjoy. So I thought overall, really, really cool event, really cool to see all the new faces and the different people that came through. And I mean, it was a flawless event. Nobody, at least that I saw, had a bad experience.
Yeah. It's interesting. You bring that up, like the plumbing, or, knowing about mining. And this is like, so how like the nerds want to treat it. And I'm one of those OG nerds who like really love to sit and talk about theory and argue with people. And now it's like, man, like we're almost to the point where that doesn't matter. And that's a really cool thing. But it reminds me of this conversation I developed when we were at CES in January, that I realized, because people kept walking up and being like, what company is this? And I was like, well, this is the BSV booth. And they're like, well, so you're all owned by, like they just kind of didn't get it. And I came up with this explanation. I said, so imagine this is CES 1996 and we're the internet businesses booth, right? Like, we're the ones that are like, hey, we think your business should be on the internet. And like, here's an internet business in the marketing space, and here's an internet business in the gaming space, and here's one in the healthcare space, and whatever, right? And like, we just believe that this is the next stage of platform underlying technology that'll take business to the next level. And people really got that. They really liked that analogy. They're like, oh, okay, so you guys don't have anything in common with each other other than like you like the same infrastructure. And like, it's still, even that's a little weird when you think about it, right? Like, no, we all agree on the same plumbing standards, but we're not really colleagues in any other regard. Yeah. But I think it's a good descriptor. And so I agree with what you said. Like, just to watch people actually play and actually do these things. Speaking of block streamers, I actually met a Blockstream employee, not at that night, but the night before. And he knew who I was. Like, he walked up to me and was like, right, exactly. So he's like, hey man, I want you to, like, I work at Blockstream and all this. I was like, oh wow, so you've seen them like without their human skin on, huh? He's like, and he immediately, like, he cracked up, like, and he appreciated it. But we talked about exactly that, like, we talked about 51% attacks and, Lightning Network. And I got him to agree that like Lightning Network isn't an example of a layer 2 technology. And like, because that was the kind of conversation he wanted to have. He was an infrastructure nerd, and like, but after that, 10, 15 minutes of that conversation, he was like, well, what can you do with BSV? And Haste was an example I gave, and crypto fights and VX Pass and, and a bunch of these other things. And he was like, oh, that's actually, that's pretty interesting. And like, you actually sit and talk to somebody, especially in person, and get them to download hand cash and get them to try these things. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, I understand why you care, at least. Like, he realized very quickly that A, I wasn't an idiot, and B, that like there's a long-term vision that is interesting outside of the like, we only have a security dilemma. And that's how people think, is how do we solve this constantly evolving security dilemma? and they don't ever get past that. So I guess I basically just want to thank you for creating some really cool stuff to show people.
Well, I think what you just hit on too, the actual talking in person to people and not, on Twitter where it's faceless or you have laser eyes or whatever. It's like very few people are actually going to walk up to you, especially you. You're big dude. You could probably mess some people up. They're not going to come up to you and say some of the things that they would, behind the keyboard. So when you can actually have like educated discussions where you're also able to, demonstrate a product in the working environment, that changes people's perspective. And I think that's what we saw, like at least at the Bitcade environment. And I think one other thing to harp on that, it seemed to me like that event is something that could easily be replicated, by us, by you guys again, or, by other companies as well. But I can see, the smaller, more engaging environment like that, where you actually can have those types of discussions being more beneficial than going to a convention with 10, 20,000 people. And you're just, sitting as a random person in the crowd, listening to something that like, when are they going to tell me that the price went up? Like that's it. Yeah. And I think if we can continue to, do events like that, where you do have a smaller, more intimate setting, that was a cool event. Like whether you're into gaming or blockchain or whatever, like people would want to go and attend that. And I think we could probably start building, some noise around, hey, BSV, this CoinGeek, these guys do really cool things called like, check out this Bitcade event that they did last month. They're doing another one next month where it's like a couple hundred people, there's good cocktails, there's good food, and then these games are cool. It's just, that's the type of thing I think that, you can't buy that type of experience with buying out a convention center and just having a bunch of people, giving out free swag and stuff. I think that's something that is much more organic. And for us, at least, like that was one of the first things I said to the team after I got back was like, man, we got to do stuff like that. That actually gets people, excited more so than just going to a big rally and, hearing a bunch of people talk about the same stuff you've heard for 10 years. Like I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, no, I think the spillover benefits, we've basically had the same thing. Our like post-mortem on it was like, shoot, we got, 200 people to download hand cash wallets. And like, if you look at the activity, like people are still like, they're playing, people are like, oh, okay, I had fun. When can I do another one? So that could frankly turn into its own business right there, just doing those pop-ups and having a good time. So,
well, you guys got the Citadel opening, right? Like you might as well throw an arcade in there and just have one of those every weekend.
Like
the hottest party in
why
town.
not? Yeah, sell tickets at the door. Get your Chuck E. Cheese tokens, buy a stuffed Kurt at the end of the night, and bring it home. So we got Jack Pitts, who I would like to. I mostly just wanted to see his profile pic because that's pretty funny. What percentage of the evenings in Miami did you go to South Beach versus other areas of South? So he's very interested. He's Florida curious is what I'm gleaning from him. But here's the serious question from him: have you seen a bit of a bump in usage on Haste since the event? New users, can you track that information, or are you?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer the first question also. Didn't get any time in South Beach, unfortunately, other than maybe like the last day right before the flight. I had a pretty quick trip, but I know that a bunch of other people had a great time going around. To answer the actual question, we have seen a bump in usage since the event, and then that coincides also with some of the marketing, aspects that we've started pushing out to the mainstream as well. So I think it's a culmination of those two things. But for example, from the actual arcade event, I probably talked to actual conversations 20 to 30 people who, they're Haste Arcade players now. Like that's what we went there to do. The guy that ended up winning, Sneaky Fist, like I've been watching him since then. It's like he's hooked. It's just, yeah, he got some money for winning, but it was the notion of like competitive gaming that these people were extremely excited about, and the platform that we've built, gives them the opportunity to do that. So yeah, I think, and that was one of the things that when we were weighing the pros and cons of even going to that, it's like, what's the return going to be on this? If there's a couple hundred people that come through, what goals are we trying to hit? How many people do we need to become dedicated users? And yeah, we have seen an uptick since even, Saturday. It's only Tuesday, but it's been cool.
Yeah. I've had the same thing over at my house. My wife was on that leaderboard. She was number one for, hour and a half or something like that. And then Sneaky Fist is over there like banging out that game and beat her by a few points. And naturally, my wife is extremely competitive. So since then, every night, like the kids go to bed and like I hear like, she's I'm like, will you go to bed, please? She's no, I gotta get that son of a bitch. She's like, and to your point previously, like from 30 minutes ago, you get that sort of itch that you got to scratch. Like, you know what? I could be better than him, and really get back up and be that number one player. Because there's the flip side. Like you wake up in the morning, you played last night, but you wake up in the morning, you go check your phone, and you got, oh, interesting. Like 90 people have played and landed underneath me. So I've got all these things to scroll through, and I do it every morning. And I look at I scroll through and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Like, this is like, what a cool thing. Paid while I sleep. This is the American dream, right? The real investment, like passive income.
Yeah. Well, I think too, that what that also showed is when you're actually at one of those arcades, right? You're there physically, you can see the person that just passed you on the leaderboard. It's not just a handle at that point. And one of the next features we're going to be releasing is the notion of like playing within your own community or your own party. So it's like Kurt, me, and you, and Taylor and Wags can all get in one like kind of closed off room and compete against each other. And when we first put out the original Haste game, it was like we were competing against each other as friends and being like, oh, this, like, come on, like, dude, you didn't beat me. Like, what the heck? I got to get back on there because there's no way I'm going to let Wags be on the top of the leaderboard. So friendly competition is something also that right now, obviously, the arcade is every man for himself, and there's no notion of like your own little party. But that's something that we're going to be implementing in the near future that I think is also going to be really cool for people to see. And another reason to go and invite your friends to start playing in this. It's like, hey, now I'm competing strictly against the people that I want to go and talk smack to after this is over. Or it's like, hey, thanks for buying my beer tonight, from all those payouts that I got from you trying to beat my score.
No, for sure. Well, and that actually brings up an interesting point. Like you could even have, like, if bars can have their own internal situation, it could be that you're paid out in tokens that are redeemable, like rather than just paying out in BSV, you could pay out in coupons, like whoever's at the top of the board that night or whatever gets, free buffalo wings or whatever the hell you do at a bar. So like there's so many opportunities there to like cross market and make this work in social situations. But I just love it, man. It's really a lot of fun. The SDK, is the SDK out? I think last time we spoke, it was like right on the cusp. So I'm curious, is it out? And then do you guys have like a marketing plan to push that out to other game developers, or how are you going about that?
Yeah, the SDK is out. That's actually one of the first things that we got done. That's been done since before the new onboarding changes, and that's been the primary focus of what we originally built for the launch of the Haste Arcade back in October last year, was so that the third-party game devs could get their hands on the SDK. So we ran our first little mini game developer competition that concluded in January. There were, I think, 7 games in total that were submitted, which was awesome. We weren't expecting a ton of games. We were wanting more for developers to interact with our developer team so that we could see, okay, what's the communication going to be like when there's people submitting games? What's their experience with the SDK? So the point of that competition was just to get all those kinks ironed out, make sure that everything's good. We're going to be doing a much larger competition this year. We haven't really announced it yet, but it's going to conclude around September. And we're going to be working with like gaming schools at universities, getting them involved, getting their programs, to submit games and their students playing. We have some cool contacts in the different gaming schools that are going to be helping us do that. And that's going to be the next step, I guess. Well, that's going to be one of the next steps to getting, more advanced game developers to submit games. But yeah, the SDK is completely up and running. You can get all the documentation right there on the website. I think it's under the developers tab.
Sure. Do you know what languages the SDK is available in?
Oh, that's a good question. I know it's available in English, and I believe that Google has a translating function where you could probably get it in other languages, but that's a good question. I would hop on Discord and talk to one of the devs on there if you need it in a different language or to see what's possible.
Yeah, no, for sure. I just want to segue real quick. I keep seeing these conversations, these comments from Jack Pitts here. I want to remind everybody we do like a Tuesday word of the day with SLictionary. The word today, if you go define the word block, you can potentially win $25 in BSV. So really quick way to get a good chunk of change right there. And then you can go play it in the Haste Arcade. So go check out SLictionary. The word of the day, sponsored by CoinGeek, is block. So go make that happen, people. And then Jack Pitts forgot. He's wondering if Money Button was ever going to work again. So it hasn't worked in a while anyways. So why hand cash? Actually, I think this is a really good segue. Like, Money Button was the wallet du jour for a long time, had really good documentation. It was really well supported. Looks like it's maybe even being deprecated. I'm seeing like branding changes and stuff going on at Fabric, but at the same time, hand cash is just like been a bull in the space, like bringing everybody in, making killer updates. Now their website's new. It's the metaverse wallet, all this stuff. What's it like working alongside the hand cash people? And like, I know you guys have a little bit of an ecosystem with the BBG guys and some other stuff too. Like, what's it like working with that crew? And why should people work with hand cash more?
Well, first I'll just say I hope Money Button doesn't go away, because kind of like you, I have like Joe at moneybutton.com, and I paid a decent amount to get that. So hopefully it's not just completely lost. I know that you have Kurt, but
I do.
You also have Kurt on hand cash, so you're in a good spot both places. But yeah, the hand cash guys, I mean, that's basically what made the original Haste game possible, was their Connect SDK. And I'm not on the development side as much, but hearing the way that they interact with Eric and Keith and Dan, and like what they've been able to do, just in terms of like, if we need a minor thing done this way or that way, like they're very quick to be able to get that done and facilitate what we're doing. Like, they're working extremely closely with us to listen to our needs. It's not just like, hey, this is our vision, this is what we're doing, everybody else adjust to it. And I think that they have like a very good balance of sticking to their roadmap, because they're extremely, intense on user experience and all that, which is great. But also, from our perspective, like they understand that we're out there, actively trying to bring people into the ecosystem. If we have things that we think could benefit, it seems like they're eager to take that advice and listen and try and help us if we do need things. So yeah, I mean, obviously, like I said, the Connect SDK is what made the original game possible. The way that our outputs are structured, like hand cash is an integral part. Maybe John Piz could help me with that word.
Next week's word of the week.
Yeah, but it's a huge part of what we do. And knowing them, their relationship with BBG, their relationship with Nifty Jigs, all services, all companies that we're working with, it's just a really cool unison that we have and dynamic that we have between all the companies. So I mean, I'm excited for whenever they come out with a release. It's extremely well thought through. It's extremely well done. They don't do things quick just to get it done. But if there is something that we ask them about, they give it an actual look. They say, okay, either this is possible for these reasons and we're going to go do it, or this seems like an interesting idea, but this is why we're going to recommend to not do this, and we're not going to move in that direction. So we've had only good experiences with them, and obviously, like, they're a huge part of playing in the Haste Arcade. If you want your payouts, you've got to have a hand cash wallet.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's an interesting one. We got Needy asking, Joe, do you have plans to launch in India? And actually, I imagine your company is basically global, but do you have, like, does it make sense to put together like maybe a Chinese team, an Indian team, or Russian? The Russians are all the bad guys now, I guess, but like to hit markets where there's very specific like cultural concerns and language barrier kind of stuff. Do you have plans that big yet, or are we focused on English speaking and stuff first?
The answer is yes and no. So with the hand cash fiat ramps, that was a pretty big deal for us, at least in terms of like the US and the Mexican markets, because that was the first places where their ramps were approved. Now, if people in India have BSV, like obviously, yeah, you can download a hand cash wallet, you can send your BSV there, and you can start playing in the arcade. But in terms of actually like marketing and approaching those territories, what we've talked about is trying one and finding one in particular where we know like play to earn is a huge deal. So the example I'll give, we met a guy from the Philippines recently who has an app called Leica. And he basically has taken the social media model of, the big tech companies getting all the money for selling user data, and he's kind of flipped it. So he's still getting advertisers to purchase this data from him. But now instead of keeping all of it, he's actually just doing a revenue share with his users. So they've grown like ridiculously large in a very small amount of time.
Sure.
And what he does is within his different, functions of his application, he incentivizes people to engage. So the people there have found, okay, what are the, the most cost-effective ways for me to engage and then earn what are called Leica coins. Or Leica gems, I'm sorry. Yeah. And so they're actually receiving, what we told them it should be is you could just make these tokens. In essence, it's the same thing that you're distributing. They're just not on chain. And doing that in, a territory that we know people are extremely eager to do this type of stuff. And I think DuroDogs is a great example of that. I think they've seen, I don't know if it's India or the Philippines or one of these countries, but basically people will have started like farming as like dog trainers. So they're, digging every whatever amount of time it is that their dog has energy. And every once in a while they find a pretty valuable NFT that their dog digs up that they can then go and sell. So that's an incredible way to get into the BSV ecosystem. You don't have to spend anything. You're doing a function that's free within the game. You're earning, this NFT that you can then go and sell for actual, crypto, for actual BSV. I think if we were to start looking into India or one of these other, territories, that would be the type of market that we would be going for. I think we'd want to probably have a slightly different type of game in the arcade before we did that. But yeah, I mean, like I said, the answer is yes and no. For the time being, our focus is going to be where the hand cash ramps, are have been accepted by governments and regulations. But as that expands, obviously, yes, like we want people all around the world to be playing.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, that actually brings up another question. Like, you look at government regulations and stuff and the way that they treat like blockchain, you get the people that are like, proof of work is, needs to go away. Or you get the people that are like, hey, we need to tax every transaction. And like, it's funny. I think that Haste is a really good example of like, well, here, this is clearly not like an investment vehicle. Like so when I buy my, $30 on hand cash or whatever, and I'm going to sit and play Haste for the next year, like I think probably technically every transaction is a taxable event, but like, I think it's a really good example to show the government, be like, hey, I clearly wasn't using this as an investment. And like, you get a good accountant and we get like millions of people to file their taxes in such a way where it's like, hey, here's 50,000 micropayments. This wasn't an investment vehicle for me, but there's some really interesting stuff there. It's actually something I've been warning people about for like 5 or 6 years or more. Like, hey guys, it's really important to use Bitcoin for things or else it becomes taxed like property, which is where we are today.
Yep. That's something that, I mean, we talked about that really early on because of the notion of the micropayments. Like it is, I guess the term is like unduly burdensome to go back through hundreds of millions of, half a cent transactions and trying to figure out what the tax is on this stuff. And we talked to some accountants and they're like, yeah, this is going to be one of those things where you guys are way ahead of the regulation. The regulation for this is not going to happen for a long time. And we even, I mean, one of the earliest conversations we had was like, well, if there isn't an accounting platform that does this, like maybe we should even build that. And I mean, that's not something that we're obviously working on, but yeah, at some point there's going to need to be infrastructure for micropayments in terms of like how that gets taxed. Because like you're saying, it's just, you're not going to, as a government, like these are not investment opportunities. These are people playing casual games for, small portions of a cent.
Well, the beauty of it, for people that are making decent money is that you can export all of your stuff and do it in like a reasonably sized font and like send a pallet of paperwork to the IRS and say, well, here's like 800 pounds of paper that indicates how I spent like $40 over the last year.
Yeah. So
each expo is listed. Yeah. Have fun. It's all there, I promise. But no, it's a really funny. It's an interesting dilemma where you're absolutely right. Like we're so far ahead of the curve that like policy about tax and all of that stuff, like it becomes absurd, right? But that's technically, that palette of paper is technically what the IRS requires of us.
Yeah.
So is there going to be an interesting little battle there coming in the next few years, I imagine. You know what? I'm going to pop up another Jack Pitts quote because he appears to be having a really good time with the stream today. Favorite surf break in Sandog, North County, LA, SoCal, pro baseball player you copied the most while playing. Okay, so these are multiple questions. So where's the best place to surf, and which baseball player have you copied the most while playing?
I guess the best surf break I've had in the Los Angeles area, I've never surfed Rincon, which is like a world-class right point break. I've surfed Point Doom, which is in Malibu. That's probably my favorite spot. It's a little bit rocky, so if you wipe out, you can get a little cut here and there. But I mean, where we live, Manhattan, Hermosa Beach area, South Bay, Los Angeles, pretty average, but at least you get, you know, some type of wave every day. So it's nice at least being able to get out there and get in the water, and it's not dreadfully cold. And then the baseball stuff, I was a huge Derek Jeter fan back in the day. I mirrored basically everything he did, which at the time seemed like a good idea, but now all anybody cares about is home runs. So I wasn't really hitting any bombs, as the kids would say. So yeah, didn't work out for me.
Need more steroids, man.
Yeah.
Here's a good one. Any plans on going to gaming events like E3 to spread the word? And actually, like, how can we help? Like, if Haste wants to more deliberately, we should be doing these kind of booths and pop-ups. Like, maybe the next thing that we do becomes a CoinGeek / Haste pop-up arcade, and people get to see the tech. So what events should we all be going to?
Yeah, you know, that's interesting. E3 is obviously a really big one, and we've considered at least attending. I don't think, you know, doing a booth would be something that we'd be able to pull off, at least at this current state. But we were at the Game Developers Conference last month in San Francisco. We were at the Casino and Esports Convention in Las Vegas last month. We're going as attendees more so right now than actually having like a booth. I mean, CES was incredible. Obviously, like CoinGeek helped tremendously with setting that up. That was a world-class booth. But yeah, until I think we've got a little bit more traction, and, you know, those booths, they're not cheap. They're, you know, if you're going to do it right, which is what we would want to do, you know, they're six-figure booths. Some of them go up to $1 million. And that would be something where, you know, from what we've seen, the major studios are going to have that set up. That's just, you know, part of their marketing spend. It's not a big deal. Yeah. But for us in particular, right now, I think doing smaller events like the Bitcade is what we're going to focus on more so in terms of like conferences and convention type setups, because that's, you know, the entire focus is going to be on us, or at least on, you know, BSV in general. We're not going to be competing with Riot Games or EA Sports to get people's attention, which is just, you know, that's I think a much bigger picture type deal, at least for exhibiting. Now, attending, obviously, like, yes, we want to be there. We want to meet people. We want to make the connections. So I think that's where we would, you know, how we would look at it right now.
No, I love that. Actually, it's a good idea. We should set up a small pop-up 3 blocks away and then go pass out flyers at E3 or whatever. So let's do some brainstorming, Joe. Yeah. Any closing thoughts, man? It's been an hour. I feel like we've been talking for 15 minutes here, man.
I don't know. I've been thinking about the event a lot since I got back, just in terms of the new faces that were in there, and then the overall takeaways that people had once they left about not Haste, but about BSV and about the community, and like, wow, these are actually like real people doing stuff. Like, this isn't just a bunch of nonsense like scammers who are talking, you know, nonsense. It's that to me was, you know, I mean, you probably get worn down more than anybody with, you know, attacks about you or about what you're doing or about BSV. And it was just very refreshing to, you know, be able to walk away from there knowing like, hey, that was a successful event. There were no hiccups, and no one can leave there saying like, see, I knew BSV was a scam. Like they it's just right. Like, no, like it works. And seeing people who, you know, whether they knew something about crypto or didn't, when they left, they all had a positive experience. And I think that was a tremendous sign for, you know, the near term and especially the long term, where it's like, you know, the more things like that occur, the more people are at least going to, you know, maybe BSV doesn't pump and go to $1 bazillion like we all hope for at some point, but at least there's a certain validity that's going to come with what we're building in general. And I think that's really all that as a business, you can hope for, is whatever happens after that in terms of money, like, so be it. But in terms of what you're actually building and the types of things that you're investing your time in, I just thought that, it was a really rewarding experience to see that people can walk away from what we're doing and be like, oh, these guys aren't crazy. They're not scammers. Like, this is just a cool idea and it works.
For sure. Now, you know what? I frankly just had a really good time hanging out. It was really good to see you in Miami, and I'm glad the event was such a success. And it took a lot of organization on the side of me and Alex to get that all
you guys. Yeah, you guys killed it.
No, I'm really glad, and really there were a lot of people on the back end that deserve a lot of thanks, and you're one of them. So thanks for coming out and helping us make it a success. And I'm looking forward to talking to you soon, man.
Yeah, well, the East Coast Citadel, I guess, is what you guys are
calling South Florida, man. I don't necessarily want to associate with the New Yorkers, but
okay.
So come out soon, man. I got actually David Case is crashing at my place right now, but when he's gone, you can pop in. It's a good time.
Sweet, love it. Couch surfing, cool. But yeah, I guess I will hopefully see you out in Dubai. But again, thanks as always, Kurt. It was great seeing you last weekend too.
For sure. Take it easy, man. So there we have it, everybody. That's Joe DePinto, one of the co-founders of Haste Arcade, and just a hell of a good guy to hang out with. We really did have a good time out there. Some of the stuff I've been talking about since, like, do a meetup. Like, if you're out there and you're like a BSV advocate and you just kind of want to show people some stuff, like, you can host a meetup, and the meetup can be like, hey, learn how to use Haste Arcade, and everyone that joins, like, jumps in, you get a hand cash wallet. Maybe everybody gets $1. You can literally give everyone at the thing $1. I promise you, if it's like $10 or $20 total, like, you can make a request to Bitcoin Association. They can probably make it worth your while. Get that kind of thing funded and have a Haste tournament in your local neighborhood. These are ways that we can onboard people and let them see, like, hey, the tools actually work. Hey, independent companies are building really cool things that cannot exist on any other blockchain. So just a lot of cool stuff to do. But really, it is on us, each of us as individuals, to let people know that, hey, we can change the world, we can build real businesses, and we can actually disrupt all kinds of cool stuff. So everybody, I'm going to wrap. I'm going to thank my wife, my kids, actually my mother-in-law, who's been out taking care of the kids with me, or with my wife while I've been doing the show today. Thank you to all of them. So everybody, most of all, thank you. I appreciate everybody. I'm going to throw up another Jack Pitts, man. He's killing me today with the commentary. So everybody, thank you. Thank you mostly to Jack Pitts. He seems really engaged today. So please hit the like, the subscribe, all that. Hit the alarm bell. Make sure that you get notified every time we go live here at CoinGeek. This has been the CoinGeek Weekly Live Stream. I am really bald, Kurt Wuckert Jr., and I will see you next week on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Brandon, close the show.
Imagine going to your local arcade, inserting a quarter into the game, and posting a high score on the leaderboard. And then, everyone who comes after you and fails to beat your high score, you get a portion of their quarter every time. Now imagine placing that high score on a global leaderboard where millions of daily players are fighting for your top spot. This is a game changer. This is Haste Arcade. Jump in right now and play across multiple modern arcade-style games, earning cash instantly deposited to your hand cash wallet. Let's introduce Player Cards, the world's first output NFT. You can mint your own and gather others, from friends to top players. For any player card you hold, you earn a portion of each gameplay output. This is a Haste token. Earn them daily just for playing. They can be used to purchase things like prizes, player cards, and more. Trade them on exchanges or simply redeem them for cash. This is the next gen of gaming. Play, earn, grow on Haste Arcade.